Good afternoon. Welcome to another APUSH video with Mr. Bate. Today we're going to be looking at the Articles of Confederation and why it did not succeed. Our essential questions for looking at the Articles of Confederation in the critical period are: why did the Second Continental Congress create such a weak government in the first place? And secondly, what caused the Articles of Confederation, what caused it to fail? So we're going to go ahead and take a look at these over the course of the next few minutes. Here we go. We're going to look at things, well, let's go ahead and answer this first question. Why did the Second Continental Congress create such a weak government? Essentially, they did this because of their experiences with the British between 1763 and 1776 when they had the Declaration of Independence. Let's think about this. They had things like the Quartering Act and the closing down of colonial assemblies. They had lack of freedom of the press. They did not have limits on, search and seizure. So there were a number of different ways they felt like they lacked some of the rights they deserved. They had no taxation, they had no representation when they were being taxed. So they looked at this and said, this British government is tyrannical, it's too powerful, has too much control over our lives. So essentially what we need to do is have a government that is void of those powers, that could never become tyrannical like that. So they create a government with very little power. All right, to look at our second question, what caused the Articles of Confederation to fail? Well, that's kind of a larger answer, and let's go ahead and look at it. So on this side we have lack of powers under the Articles of Confederation, and over here, correspondingly, we have problems manifested during the critical period. So here we go. We have 5 different areas to look at. The first one's going to be interstate relations. Now, this might not be something you ever think of, but in our government today, if we have a problem, let's say there's a dispute between California and Arizona over water rights to the Colorado River, which has happened. This is going to be something that will go, the states can sue each other, go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ultimately makes a decision, and then everyone moves on. And it's binding, and everyone accepts that. There was nothing like this at the time. There was no power to regulate interstate commerce, and with that, you have no trade agreements between states. You have states that go to the verge of war with each other. New York and New Jersey almost went to war, literally start raising their own militias to fight each other over control economically of a river on their border. There was no one to mediate this, to solve this problem. So today we can see how that would be easily solved. Back then, not at all. So New York, New Jersey almost go to war. That's obviously a danger sign. The second area is finances. Looking at the area of finances, there was no power to tax, and there was no control over states' printing of money. Now, with no control over states' printing of money and no power to tax, I assume your imagination will allow you to see bad things could occur. If there's no money to run the government, how does the government do anything? You take for granted, I'm assuming, probably, things today, such as the roads you drive on, the schools you go to, parks you could go to, and many other things that the government does. How about providing clean and safe drinking water, dependable power? So there are lots of things, national defense, that the taxes pay for, and we just take for granted. They were so hamstrung and cash-strapped because of no taxes that they're having to basically ask states for money. The states are not giving them the money, that representatives quit showing up. As the years go on of the Confederation Congress, some of the representatives, they're not even getting paid because they have no money to pay them. And then they end up not even having a quorum, which means the number you have to acceptably to take action and vote on something. So representatives start giving up and not even showing up, who've been elected. They stay home and run their farms or businesses and help take care of their families. If nothing else, that would absolutely show what a pathetic shell of a government this becomes. They can't even get the legislators to go who are elected and do the government. No control over states printing money. This is a huge problem also because you have the diminished value of the dollar. In 1776, at the time of the Declaration of Independence, the value of the dollar versus the Spanish doubloon was $3 American to 1 Spanish doubloon. So it had 1/3 of the value. 10 years later, in 1786, the value was now $130 US against 1 Spanish doubloon in 10 years. Now that just shows that the states were printing money left and right to pay expenses But when that money's not based or backed with hard currency, that is gold or silver, you have dramatic problems that occur. That's a huge issue. So again, we have some major problems in the area of finances. Our third area is lack of control. We have a weak army and navy that could not demand money or troops to support basically the army and navy. So they can't pay for it, they can't demand troops or draft them in. And so if problems occur, they've got a huge issue. And you're going to see a lot of different problems with Vermont. Vermont considered itself a state, but it was not officially a state. It was claimed as territory by neighboring states. So the British try and woo it to join Canada and pick up some territory. Literally, they're trying to say, Vermont, join us. We'll give you more of a recognition. Well, the United States didn't have the military power to do anything about this, so they're going to have to try and just work with the people of Vermont to solve this problem, and eventually Vermont becomes a state. The British and Indians in the Old Northwest. In the Old Northwest, what you're going to see is the British are going to encourage Native Americans to launch attacks, harass settlers, and the British are not even going to evacuate these posts that they promised to at the Treaty of Paris 1783 at the end of the Revolutionary War. They don't even evacuate the posts, these frontier posts and forts that they're supposed to. So they're basically just kind of thumbing their nose in the United States. They're flouting U.S. authority and just doing what they want because they know the United States militarily cannot do anything about it, really. Okay. Also, Florida. The Spanish are doing the same thing, encouraging Native American attacks out of Spanish Florida and neighboring areas down into the Old Southwest. And the Spanish are also trying to woo the frontier people in the Old Southwest on the border of Florida. Hey, come and join us. We will protect you from Native Americans. So they're encouraging attacks, but then saying, we'll offer you protection. Join us. And at this time this is happening, again, how does the United States solve that? It's very difficult for them to solve that. Shays Rebellion. You have a bunch of farmers who are getting foreclosed on because the government can't do anything to help them about the economy that is just drifting into this depression and bad. And the farmers are losing their farms, getting foreclosed on, so they eventually take over the courts of the state and they almost take over their state government because there is no military power, there is no centralized control. And this is just a group of former Continental Army people and farmers at the time who just get really angry. And the last one for this area is pirates. Without a strong navy, the British flag had protected against pirates wanting tribute in the Mediterranean. But they're not a part of the British government anymore. Another way to look at this, the classic mafia example of the mafia offering protection for a business or restaurant or something, which basically means you pay them off and they will make sure no one harasses you, or essentially they leave you alone too. Okay? So you take that kind of stereotypical example that you would see on TV or something of organized crime in the United States. The pirates are doing the same thing. If you want to trade and not be bothered in the Mediterranean Sea, you need to pay them tribute. Okay, you give them a payoff. Well, the United States was not going to do a payoff and had no money to pay them off. They're not covered by the British flag, so now you see the pirates seizing U.S. cargo, taking ransom, doing all these things, for captives that they take, kidnapping them. And so, again, the U.S. very incapable of doing anything about this. It's a huge problem. Okay, on to political impotence, although you've already seen some of it. No executive or judicial branch, and it took 9/13 ratio of each state getting one vote to pass any laws unanimous to amend the Constitution they had. Okay, today in society, if you follow anything going on politically, you will see it's very difficult to get 50% to pass anything. If you need a 60-vote supermajority, it's almost impossible to get. It's a huge problem. At this time, they had no checks and balances. They had no independent three branches to balance each other. Not enough government power to accomplish things, as we've already seen. It was too hard to pass anything. So if they saw anything where they're like, well, we need to amend this and fix this area, no way. You're not going to get everybody to agree. You had divergent interests, as we can see, going clear back to the earlier video on the different parts of the colonies, northern, middle, and southern. There's huge differences there. So you're not going to get everybody to agree, and thus you have basically a government that just is stuck in the mud and cannot get anything done. Okay, the last area is foreign relations. There's no power to enforce treaties or trade agreements. There's no chief executive to negotiate with other countries. one way this is manifested is Spain closes the Mississippi River, all access to New Orleans. This was the lifeblood of Western farmers who used rivers like the Ohio River or other tributaries that flow into the Mississippi. They would float things down the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's the way they got them out to trade. It was impossible to take them over the Appalachian Mountains, so this is their only way to sell their crops. And it was a difficult way. Well, when Spain closes New Orleans and says, nope, can't come through here, they're dead. They literally have economically no life left, and it becomes a huge problem and a major concern. With all of these different problems that slowly build and cause more frustrations, and then with Shays' Rebellion kind of as an exclamation point, this leads the Founding Fathers to say, ideally this would have worked. George Washington even says maybe we've had too high of an opinion of human nature. Okay, well, they're basically admitting, you know what, we need a stronger government. And the Articles, Congress recommends that they go and revise some things, but they decide it's too difficult and they end up scrapping the whole thing. And that's how you get to the Constitutional Convention and develop of an entirely new, much more effective government. And that's all the time we have for... That answers our question, actually. So what caused the Articles of Confederation to fail? It's basically everything right here. And now, that's all the time we have for today. Stay classy.